In this chapter, we're looking at times when markets are inefficient without government intervention. And in the last couple of videos, we've been focusing on externalities as an example of one of these three times. So externalities, remember, are times when the social costs or benefits of a market activity are not equal to the internal costs or benefits of that market activity. These often occur because of a lack of clearly defined property rights. So property rights give the owner the ability to exercise control over a resource, and private property provides exclusive right of ownership that allows for the use and exchange of property. When we have private property, we have certain incentives. We have incentives to maintain the property, incentives to protect the property and conserve it, and then the incentive to trade with others and create value in a market. If property rights can't be assigned, if we have a piece of property that's doesn't necessarily belong to anyone in particular, then we don't have these same incentives, and that's when oftentimes externalities arise. So you can think about the air that we breathe. To whom does the air belong? It belongs to everyone and no one all at the same time, right? And so whose job is it to maintain air quality? Is it that one factory owner's job to maintain the air quality? Well, he or she might argue that, no, why would I put in all of the money to maintain the air quality when someone down the street is also messing up the air? Why would I put in the money, incur the cost of maintaining it, protecting it, conserving it, when others aren't putting in their fair share to protect the air that really belongs to everyone and belongs to no one? And so you can see from that example that we start to have some issues, some externality issues will likely arise whenever property rights can't be assigned. This is something that was thought of by an economist named Coase, who came up with this particular example of the usefulness of property rights. So the Coase Theorem applies to property rights in examples such as this one. So say there are two adjacent farmers and there are no fences. One farmer is raising cattle, the other one's growing wheat. So what's going to happen, of course, if there's no fence, is the cows are going to eat the grain, right? So how do we fix that? Scenario one, the cattle rancher is liable for damages the cows cause. So we assign a property right to the wheat farmer. We say, no, this farmer has a right to grow his or her wheat and have it uninhibited by the cows that live next door. And so, cattle rancher, if your cows cause problems to the wheat farmer's property, you're going to have to pay for it. You're liable for those damages. What is the cattle rancher going to do? The cattle rancher is likely to put up a fence. The other option is they have to pay the damages to the wheat farmer. So really they'll consider the cost of both and make their choice. If their cows aren't very hungry and aren't likely to eat the wheat, then they may choose not to put up a fence and just to pay small damages for whatever small amount of wheat that their cows may damage. But most likely what's going to happen is the cattle rancher will put up a fence. Scenario two. Now we provide the property right to the cattle owner. The wheat farmer does not have a legal right to cattle-free fields. The cattle owner has a right to have his cows, and cows eat wheat. That's just a side effect of living next to cows. Your wheat may get damaged by the cows. So the cattle rancher now has the right to the property, the right to own cows, whatever the cows may do. So what is the wheat farmer going to do? Either put up a fence or accept the cattle damage. Most likely they'll put up a fence unless the cows aren't really doing much damage, right? The result is that if the property rights are fully specified, somebody's going to build a fence. All we had to do was come into a situation where there are cows next to wheat and there's no fence and the cows are eating the wheat. All we had to do was come into this situation and assign a property right. Say either the cattle rancher has a right to have his cows, and they do what they do, or say the wheat farmer has a right to have his wheat, and if the cows damage it, you got to pay for it, right? Either way, if we assign a property right, the externality gets fixed. The problem is fixed. The cost to your neighbor of having a cow next to a wheat farm gets fixed when we are able to assign a property right. This is the Coase Theorem. So in big, fluffy econ words, the Coase Theorem says this: if there are no barriers to negotiations, and if property rights are fully specified, interested parties will bargain to correct externalities. As long as we allow them to bargain, as long as we allow them to go back and forth and decide who's going to build the fence and for whom does it make more sense to build the fence, right? If we assign property rights, externalities get fixed. The problem when we start to see externalities and when we start to see the inefficiencies in markets that externalities cause is when we have particular goods or services that we can't easily assign a property right to. That'll be the subject of the next video.